Give it back.
Hello peeps, it is I, Marshall Quinston, and it's album review time. Today's album is pretty special. It's the new Midnight Oil album, Makarrata. Yeah, the Makarrata Project. Baila tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo baila alegría cosa buena. Baila tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Makarrata. Alright, so this album is pretty special to me. In case you're not totally familiar, Midnight Oil is an Australian band that is mostly known internationally thanks to the hit Beds Are Burning, released in the mid-80s. But they've disbanded in 2002, right after the release of their 11th record, Capricornia. However, the band reunited in 2017, and they've been teasing a new record since then, but it never truly came into fruition. Until now. Earlier in this year, the band released Gadigal Land, their first song in years, which got me really pumped for what was coming, because I really liked how the song turned out. Prior to that, I was even unsure if the album would come out at all, and I got to say, I'm a huge fan of Midnight Oil. I even own a copy of Diesel and Dust. I don't usually buy albums because I don't really have the budget for it, but when I saw it on the store, I had to buy it. I love this album so much. And now, this new album finally came out. Is it any good? Well, yeah, kinda. Lyrics-wise, it's just like every other Midnight Oil record. The lyrics talk about socio-political issues from Australia, sometimes they mention international problems, but it's mostly Australian stuff. However, there's a thing that made the band stand out in the first place. That's how, despite always talking about these problems from their land, that often sounded tragic, it was always accompanied by fantastic music. For example, take a listen to their song Forgotten Years. The lyrics are, well, depressing. It talks about war veterans being forgotten for what they've done, despite suffering from PTSD to this day. However, listen to this intro. This thing is fantastic. It's warm, catchy, exciting, but not too much to the point that it sounds out of place, and it's one of Midnight Oil's best songs. This record has good songs, but none of them come close to being Forgotten Years, or even some other oldies that are classics and incredible, such as Beds Are Burning, Short Memory, Powderworks, all of those. None of the tracks are offensively bad. In fact, we have some really good cuts in here, but the low points are very boring. And the worst part isn't even that they're boring, but some don't even feel like Midnight Oil songs. I mean, there's two tracks in specific here that if you listen to them with no background and someone told you that it's a Midnight Oil song, you wouldn't say, "Oh really?" You would say, "No it's not. This is Midnight Oil, goddammit. Where are the frenetic catchy synths? Where are the anthemic vocals? Where are the dynamic instrumentals together with Peter Garrett singing, 'Oh yeah, let's lynch the British'?" That was my Peter Garrett impersonation. I know it sucked, don't need to tell. And since these two songs are really slow, I feel like people are about to say,
Marshall, you're basically saying that the band can make slow songs, that's stupid.
First of all. And second of all, have you ever heard the song Whoa from Diesel and Dust? Whoa is in my opinion the best song of Diesel and Dust, and it's also the slowest track of the record. It has slow guitar strums, the harmonization in the chorus are beautiful, and it's very clearly a Midnight Oil song. Especially since in the outro we get a blast of energy that makes it all more beautiful, all more incredible, all more everything. I feel like the main thing that caused the songs to sound so disconnected to the record is the fact that they are not sung by Peter Garrett. Instead, both have invited guests performing these songs. Which is okay, plenty of bands have done this. But I feel like if you're doing something like that, you should at least make it with the sound that band's known for. Don't get me wrong. Out of the context of this record, these songs are fine, but they do not belong in the Midnight Oil project. And also, another thing that I think is odd is the excessive amount of features in this record. Look at this track list. Every single song here has at least one feature. What is this, DJ Khaled?
We could barbecue. There's one more request. I want to have 1 million plaques.
I don't mind the band deciding to include guests in their tracks. In fact, I really endorse it. But come on every song of the album? Really? No, for real. Really? I also feel like this is an appropriate time to enter more detail about the songs, so here's the track by track. Right, so First Nation was the second single of the album, and it was actually pretty good. This song opens with tight guitars and harmonizations that scream their band's name. It really makes you say, "They're back, baby, they're back!" After this warm opening, we have a really nice chorus, followed by a rap verse? In a Midnight Oil song? I mean, Rush did that in the early 90s, and it sounded corny as hell, so it's weird to... to be honest, this verse is pretty solid. It's just kinda strange to hear a rap verse in a song by then. At least it's not Garrett the one rapping. God, I feel like that would be tragic. Anyway, besides the odd encounter, that's a pretty good song. One of the positive highlights of the album to me, and totally worth to be a single, just like... Welcome to the Gadigal Land. Gadigal Land is the album's lead single, and it's as Midnight Oil as it gets. The song begins in a high note, with those catchy trumpets already embracing you, and the lyrics are again, well, you know.
Yes, Midnight Oil, thanks for teaching me about issues from a country that I've never been, and it's on the other side of the globe. Yeah!
To be honest, there isn't much to say about this track. It's just a really good Midnight Oil song, much like the new Bright Eyes album. It's nothing new, but it's still pretty darn good. Another positive highlight here, and it's also the album's best track, no debate on that. Now here the initial rush starts to slow down a little. Change the Date is a pretty... song. It has nice pianos and all, and it has even some verses in a native Australian language that I don't even know the name. But in an overall perspective, it's not really a track that has much going on. It's just kinda pretty at points, and it has a nice cultural touch, but it doesn't have much replay value. It's just okay. This is one of the songs I've talked about before. Do I really have to say anything else? Just lay the negative highlight hammer on this one. The same thing of Terror Australia. It's negative highlights. Now here things are getting better. A fun fact about this track is that it's a cover from a song from a solo work of Gene Mogany. I probably said that wrong, but whatever. The band's guitarist and keyboardist. It begins in a similar style to First Nation, with guitars, this time acoustic, and harmonizations. And while it's a song that isn't too sparkly or wild, it's a pretty darn good track, and one of the positive highlights of the record to me. It's a song that feels very alive and has a really uplifting energy on it, and the lyrics feel strangely optimistic compared to everything the band has done. It's almost like a song to hear in a morning stroll across our city's park. Oh boy, this song is certainly something. It has almost 7 minutes in length, but over half of this thing's a speech. A bunch of different people that I don't know, but they are probably important, talking about the mass murder of native Australians back in the colonization days. I also live in a country that was colonized, so I understand how barbaric those times were. And while I appreciate the message, I don't think they chose the most effective way to share that idea. A speech in the middle of a musical album, especially one that goes for over 4 minutes, it's bound to be skipped by the average listener. Even when I was paying attention to what was being told, I still was feeling bored over the segment, even with a nice message. At least the song itself that begins right after it is pretty good. The verses are pretty average, but the chorus is one of the nicest the band has released after the 80s, and the song in itself kinda sounded like it would be the opening of a theme song from the 90s TV series. In general, it's a very likable song, but I think the speech idea was a bit flawed. They could have approached this idea in a way that would be more pleasant to listen. So that was the Makarrata Project. Is it an album to remember? Kinda. Yeah, this record is pretty lukewarm. I do appreciate we do get some really good songs in it, but at some points this record feels disconnected to everything the band had released before. The lyrics are nothing new, but that's not a problem. After all, it's Midnight Oil. They have very solid topics since the beginning of their career, but the music in itself could have been more well explored in the more quote-unquote experimental moments of the record. So I'm going to say that the score of this record is a 64% superb. It's definitely enjoyable, but in the grand scale of things, it's not that impressive.